All right, welcome. I'm Owen Anderson. I'm a professor at ASU where I teach philosophy and religious studies, and I'm also a faculty associate at Phoenix Seminary where I teach philosophical theology. But today, all of my opinions are my own. And I'm very excited because I'm joined by Senator Kern from Arizona, who is leading the ad hoc committee on freedom of speech at the state's universities. And we had a great hearing last week where we heard both from State University and from people who were involved in a what would you call it, trouble with a center being shut down, and one of them was fired, and speakers who came in, and these are really mainstream conservative speakers, and they were called all kinds of terrible names by honors faculty. And so I'm excited that the senator is looking into that, and I wanted to get a chance to ask him some more questions today about that. So I thought I'd start right there. Could you just tell us what the ad hoc committee is doing, what it's for?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, for having me on today. As you know, it's warm out here in sunny Arizona, but I don't believe Arizona's a blue state at all or a purple state. I believe it's a deep red state. We just have to work hard to keep it that way. As far as ASU, the ad hoc committee and the free speech issue, I think we've known for a long time that there's been issues at all of our universities, specifically, and I'll put them in order: U of A, ASU, and then NAU. U of A has had just a ton of issues regarding shutting down conservative speakers over the past few years. But
Wow.
this one here, the ad hoc committee, as you mentioned, Dr. Anderson, and you were involved in, is the ASU, looking at ASU, what happened with the T.W. Lewis Center, what happened at Barrett's, which is a part of Barrett's honors, and the lunacy out there of these 39 faculty members that signed this letter. So the ad hoc committee the purpose of it is investigating what went on and making recommendations at the legislative level, whether that be funding, changing our statutes, holding people accountable, is what it's all about. We've got to ensure, Dr. Anderson, that free speech is at our universities. And as you saw in the hearing, there's a lot of people on the left that don't even know what free speech is.
Yeah. Well, it was amazing in the hearing. You brought in a lawyer to tell us about how hate speech is protected, because just calling something hate speech doesn't mean it actually is hate speech, let alone that the government would get involved in stopping it. And then during the meeting, the Democrats, what was it, a tweet they sent out that said you're in favor of hate speech just because you were getting a definition of what hate speech is.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about what hate speech is. Hate speech is something that I don't like. Okay? Yeah. And just because you might say something that I don't like, I cannot or should not stop you from saying that. Right. So just because it offends me doesn't mean you should not have the right to say it. And hate speech, one of the Democrat senators, Senator Gonzalez, she didn't even know what free speech is. She thinks that hate speech, which she could not define, should not be allowed. Okay, let's take what she thinks. If hate speech in her eyes cannot be allowed, then most everything I say as a senator is going to be deemed hate speech by her.
Yeah, by somebody, right? Yep.
Because she's of the left.
Well, that's exactly how totalitarian regimes work, right? Is they'll say this is unsafe speech, or this is traitorous speech or hate speech, and so you can't say it.
Right. And as you know, in the hearing, Dennis Prager got up, and he even said that there was a recent example of I believe the Nazi party in America protested in front of a Jewish synagogue. I forget where it was at, maybe Ohio, and they had Dennis Prager said they had every right to protest. Why? Yeah, because we live in America.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, Dennis Prager is a religious Jew who's very proud of his Judaism. Yeah, I do think there are certain laws about where you can protest. For example, you can't interrupt a religious service or block a religious service. So anytime a group gets involved in that, they've gone beyond speech into some kind of physical coercion. So we're just talking right now about speech, though. And it was interesting that Senator Gonzalez was the one who asked for a lawyer to come in. And then she missed that part when the lawyer was there. And then when she was informed about what the lawyer said, she said he's wrong. And court cases, which she didn't cite any court cases, but she
Yeah.
said court cases prove that you can't do hate speech.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
at that point, you
Well,
know what kind of evidence they want.
yeah. Well, Senator Gonzalez didn't even know why we were there. And so she's like, well, you know, what are we doing here? What policy do we have regarding free speech, if I remember correctly? And I had to read her the Constitution and the, Article 1 that specifically said, we as an American citizen have a right to free speech, and it
Yeah.
should never be squelched. And Dr. Anderson, especially in our universities, I mean, that we are training our young people to go out into the world, and we're supposed to be doing that, and we're supposed to be showing in our universities young people, college students, both sides of any issue, and let
Yeah.
them decide what direction, what path in life they want to take. And as you know, across our nation, our public universities for pretty much have gone to the left and are stifling any dissent.
Yeah.
And that should not happen.
Well, that's part of what I want to ask you about today is what we can do, because I think at the high level, let's say President Crow's level, he's been 100% supportive of intellectual diversity at ASU, and then you had in a dean of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Again, it's like a 36,000 foot up view of the ground. But then when there's people like me who are living on the ground and we're saying, well, wait a minute, I'm very thankful that you are saying those principles, but they have to be more than platitudes. On the ground, we're seeing something different. And that's the problem. And that's where I'm hopeful the legislature can do something. What are some options the legislature has to help us?
Yeah. So right now, so a couple things on that. What was brought out in the hearing, and a couple things. I would just invite your listeners to listen to the hearing and find out what, and just educate themselves on what went on. One of the things that ASU, and I agree with you, Dr. Anderson, that the administration at ASU probably heard a little a few bits and pieces of what went on at TW Lewis Center, but they're over here in the 80,000 foot level, and like you said, we're your boots on the ground. They really didn't know what was going on, and it was pretty evident in the hearing. We had told them that faculty, that these 39 members were intimidating their students through hour and a half class time, through emails, telling them they better not show up at this event. It's a white supremacist event. It's just a very bad thing to do that. These faculty members were outside of the venue of the event the night that it happened, holding signs, watching who went in. In my opinion, every one of these people should be disciplined in some way, shape, or form. And if that includes losing their job, then that's what they need to do. So here's what happened, and here's what we can do, Dr. Anderson, to answer your question. We're going to look at it legislatively. I don't know what that means yet. I do have two people helping me, Seth Liebson and a gentleman by the name of Steve Twist, and anybody else out there that would give input. I've got a couple people one person that texted me today about another free speech incident that happened in another state, and what they did to bring it to see it through. So we can do things at the legislative level, but I do want you to know that we're not going to really do anything until I believe September 20th, which is when the ad hoc committee is going to meet again, and we're going to find out what ASU has done to correct the situation. Now, I do know ASU has hired outside counsel. And I from what I'm hearing, he's a pretty good conservative attorney. Now, it's kind of like the fox watching the hen house. I'm very skeptical. But as you said, Michael Crow so far has been decent on free speech. So we're going to wait and see what ASU does before we're going to be ready in the hearing, but we're going to wait to see what they do before we make any recommendations at the legislative level.
Yeah, it makes sense. And they hired this outside counsel to investigate the Lewis Center event.
They hired the outside counsel to absolutely investigate the Lewis Center event. to investigate merit honors, to investigate these faculty. Again, I won't be satisfied until I see some kind of discipline
Yeah.
by these teachers who violated policy by intimidating their students. They have every right. Here's my opinion. Again, the free speech issue, they have every right to say what they said. But when they're using state
That's the thing. Yeah.
resources, when they're intimidating students, when the students are fearful of having pictures taken at the event,
Mhm.
when you have another director, Ann Atkinson, terrified, as she's holding the venue,
Yeah.
secret meetings telling Ann Atkinson not to say certain things. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
This has crossed the line,
That's
and
way
it's got
beyond
to
it.
stop.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that it seems there's a confusion about free speech at the workplace. And what I mean is I'm hired to teach specific classes, and the catalog, ASU's catalog, tells me what the content is. And so I have some freedom within that content to bring in my own research, but I'm not hired to show up and give my opinions about current politics or about what religion students should be. And so for a professor to say, I'm just using free speech, no, you're in the classroom. That's ASU's time. They're paying you to
Yeah,
teach this
exactly.
material. They're not paying you to talk about your personal opinions.
Yeah, and then using as a state senator, representing District 27 here in Arizona, I'm very careful about what I attach my senator name to. In
Mhm.
fact, most
Yeah.
people, I actually work a job, and it's manual labor, and most people that I work with, they find out through word of mouth that I'm a state senator.
Wow.
And then they're surprised. They're like, "Oh my God, you're a state senator." I worked in law enforcement for a while, never used my position to
Yeah.
get anywhere in law enforcement. So I'm very careful. Same thing should be happening to ASU faculty.
Yeah.
They should never use their position to garner any type of attention, any favors, any monetary favors. They should not be doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm paying taxes. You're paying taxes. Senator Gonzalez is paying taxes. We need to have a neutral ASU, U of A, NAU that teaches the students and keeps their politics out of the classroom.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that even at the beginning of this video, when I introduced myself, I gave my job for context, but then I followed up with, this is my own personal opinions.
Yep.
And that's what we're required to do as professors is let people know we're not representing ASU.
Right now at ASU, if you're going to be employed at ASU, you have to answer questions regarding diversity, equity, and
Yeah.
inclusion. I would not be hired at ASU.
No.
And I will be, why? Because I will not compromise who I am and what I stand for. And right now, I'm a conservative Christian. I know that me saying to an interview panel at ASU that I believe there are two genders, that God created them male and female, that marriage is between one man and one woman. I know that would not get me a job at ASU.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
that is really that we're heading to the path of that being hate speech, and I'm sure under
Well,
Senator Gonzalez that is hate speech.
one of the representatives, when I was speaking, did say that she thought because I brought up Genesis and I brought up that Jesus quotes Genesis about marriage, and she said that those beliefs are radical and offensive.
Yeah, well, but that was the pansexual.
Yeah, she
So
identified herself as pansexual, just so everyone knows. We're not guessing. She said she's a pansexual, and
right,
that she thinks those are radical and offensive. And those are the very opposite of radical. Radical means you're changing something. Humans have always had male and females coming together
right.
in marriage.
Yeah. And just because Representative Ortiz says something otherwise, she's not the creator of the universe. So frankly, I could care less what she says.
Yeah.
But she has the right. She made it known to the world in that hearing that she was a pansexual.
Mhm.
I didn't even know what a pansexual was. I had to ask somebody.
Yeah.
And frankly, I don't care to know. I was afraid to Google it because you never know what'll
Who
come
knows
up.
what will come up? Yeah.
Right. But she makes it a point to say how offended she was. So in the Democrats' eyes, everything you and I stand for
Mhm.
is offensive, and
Yeah.
we need to be shut down.
Yeah.
But yet the right, the conservatives like you and I have yet to say, oh, they need to be shut down.
Yeah.
No, they have a right to speak.
I actually like it. I invited all the Barrett faculty to debate because I like it when their views are made public. I think it's good when someone says,
Yes.
I'm a pansexual and I disagree with the creator of the universe, as you said, that's actually good
Yeah.
to have out there on the public record.
Yeah. Well, I'll have a little fun once we go back into session Monday. I'll have a little fun with the pansexual comment. Because the one thing they don't like is to is just to have somebody go against them.
Yeah.
And if I was in committee a few months ago, and I had asked one of the lobbyists, I said, "Can tell me, can men get pregnant?" And this lobbyist said, "Yes, they can." And I'm like,
Wow.
"Okay, well, that's a new one."
That's a problem. Yeah.
But again, everybody's scratching their heads. But the
I think
bottom
you
line
asked
is
to define a woman also, and
what
she
a woman
refused
was.
and
Yeah,
said that was
she refused to do it. Yeah.
a mean question or a
So
loaded question.
right. So Dr. Anderson, what we have, you and I have is truth. We have truth. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west. That's truth. It doesn't matter who says any different. It's true. Um, so we have truth. We stand on truth. It's definitely a culture war that we're fighting. There's a lot of things we are battling, not just ASU, but the free speech issue. We're going to push hard on, and we're going to ensure that there is accountability. One way to do that is to go to our board of regents, which, as you know, and they know that I don't trust them either. But somehow we need to hold the board of regents accountable to do their job and ensure that free speech is promoted and adhered to at our campuses. And there should be discipline for anyone that is trying to stifle
Yeah.
something that they might find offensive.
Well, and I think you really hit the nail on the head when you brought up your Christianity, because I'm a Christian also,
Yeah.
and so when I complain about DEI and point out that it's not right to have, because I have to answer an annual review question every year, we're reviewed, and I have to answer a question on my annual review: how did I contribute to diversity and inclusion this year? And I wasn't hired at all with that,
Right.
and so when I've talked about it before, people have said to me, how can you be against diversity and inclusion? And so I want those watching us to know this isn't diversity and inclusion simpliciter. It's a specific philosophy that comes out of the Marxist worldview about what those count as. And so I believe, as Christians, I believe the senator and I believe in the true kind of diversity and inclusion. We believe that God includes all humans, and
There you
all
go.
humans are offered redemption through Christ. No one is denied redemption through Christ based on any of the categories the left makes up.
Right.
And so it isn't that anyone's opposed to diversity or inclusion, but we're opposed to this brand of philosophy coming in. And I think that really is what it comes down to. I think we'll talk about free speech, we'll talk about marriage and men getting pregnant, but when it comes down to it, it seems like it comes down to belief in God.
Yep. And this is really what happens when a nation turns its back on God. That's just out there for free. But
Mhm.
but if you look at our history, the reason we have the Constitution, if you study our history at all, I'm sure you have, but your listeners out there, you look at people like George Whitefield. He had a huge he had a huge influence on the founders on drafting the Constitution.
Mhm.
If you study our history and you go to Washington, D.C., and you see the monuments, you see these great leaders, they never turned their back on God. Again, the reason why we have free speech, like you said, is because of our creator and the founders using the Bible to create the Constitution, to draft it, to vote on it, to vote it in, and then to create a country that allows for differences of opinion. And
Mhm.
what the Marxists are trying to do, and the leftists, and if your listeners listen to Dennis Prager again, he even said the reason why the left doesn't debate people like you and I and Dennis Prager and Robert Kiyosaki and Charlie Kirk is because in 90 minutes we can destroy
Mhm.
4 years of their stupidity.
Mhm.
You know, I could if Representative Ortiz, the pansexual, or Senator Gonzalez wanted to debate free speech, we'd be more than happy to do that. But they
Mhm.
won't, because we'll annihilate them. We'll make them look like fools. And that's what Dennis Prager said. In 90 minutes, the left won't debate him because in 90 minutes he can destroy 4 years of their lunacy.
Well, and he makes a good distinction too between a left, where a liberal is someone who you and I may disagree with. They tend to want big government solutions to problems, but a leftist is further to the left, and that's representing more the atheist Marxist position. And it's the leftists who have statistically just completely taken over the universities. So they're even opposed to classical liberals, let alone conservatives. And then you have libertarians on the even more conservative who wants really small government. But the old distinction between conservative and liberal is kind of melted away in the face of these leftists. And I've had challenges to that who have said, oh, you're just like Senator McCarthy. You're where you see Marxists everywhere. But Marxism can be easily identified by reading the Communist Manifesto. And the first thing that says is all of history is a conflict between classes. So Marx said there's no God who rules the world and rules history. It's just classes fighting each other. And that's what these professors teach. And that's how they interpret all of history. And so it's not hard to identify that being taught in the classroom.
Yep, absolutely. And, the whole thing is when you take God out, you put the government in. When you take God out or a moral foundation, the only place you can turn to is within yourself. And any dissent, the reason why they call you McCarthy or they start calling names is because that's all they have. When they're confronted with truth, they don't know what to do. How dare you and I, stand up and be counted? But in order to turn ASU around and U of A and our nation, in order to turn that around, we have got to stand up and get in the fight. To do nothing is to agree with the left.
Yeah.
And every one of your listeners has got to, attend the hearings, vote the right way, just get involved.
Well, and I think that's right. Because I think one way that the leftist will ingratiate themselves is they'll point out that all they care about are the poor or the downtrodden. And who's against that? We all want to help the poor and the downtrodden, but they cloak their real philosophy with those really universal concerns. And pretty soon you find out, oh, wait a minute, we've brought in totalitarian government and we've brought in atheism. And so I think the offensive part has always been for the offensive part of the world against Christians, because there's one sense in which I agree with Representative Ortiz when she said that's offensive. I think the gospel is offensive.
It is.
It's offensive to our sin life. Yeah. And that's always been the stumbling block of Christ. And so it's not just that you and I are saying there's some higher power. We're saying that Christ specifically says that we've sinned and we need to turn to him. And that is offensive to all of us, right?
Yep, it is. I mean, when you're confronted, when you're confronted, it is offensive when you're confronted with truth, if you're not willing to embrace truth and look inward. For all these atheists out there that think there is no God, all they have to do is look up in the sky at the nighttime and ask yourself, why are those planets hanging in place day after day, year after year, century after century? There is a God. We will stand before him someday. We will give an account of our life here on earth. And my dad used to tell me he said, Tony, when you're ready to die, just make sure you're ready to die. And I'm ready. I'm confident in who I am. I'm confident in the God that I serve. I'm confident in the philosophy that I believe in because it's based on truth. And again, we just have to continue to speak. ASU, we're going to continue the fight. We're going to continue the push. I want to thank you, Dr. Anderson, because it takes guts. It takes guts to be where you're at. And very few people will lead from the front. A lot of them will wait for leaders and they'll get behind you. But I want to thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. I'm very impressed with you. And people like Ann Atkinson and Dennis Prager, Robert Kiyosaki, Seth Leeson.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God for people like you.
Well, thank you so much. And same for you. It's the same kind of leading in front means you're going to take all the shots. But the truth of the matter is you have to do it because you got to do what's right. Yep. But I love what you just said when you said you look at the sky and you see God, because really what you're doing there is you're appealing to natural theology, which I also brought up in the hearing, that the whole creation reveals God to us.
Yes.
And that should show us that, we should look at him. And then also bringing up the fact of our own death. Yep. Our own death should make us all think I better examine myself and make sure I'm reconciled to God. Right.
Yep. I mean, you look at Representative Ortiz, my heart goes out to her. She's lost. I mean,
well, that's what I said on my Substack. I wrote an article about it and I said, I'm not sure she's ever heard the gospel in her whole life.
Right.
So that might have been the first time where she heard the words of scripture read.
Yeah, yeah. And after that hearing, I thought to myself, I'm gonna pray for her. I prayed for her a few times, and
Yep.
and Anna Hernandez, her Senate counterpart, she's very left, but her and I get along pretty good. She knows where I stand. I know where she stands, but it is what it is, and that's America, and that's American
Yeah.
politics.
Yeah.
But we're not out here to stifle their free speech. We're not out here to tell these faculty members you can't say that. We're
Right.
out here just to do right. You
Mhm.
shouldn't be using your state resources. You
Yeah.
shouldn't be intimidating students. You shouldn't be going after faculty that you might disagree with,
Yeah.
and using your position of trust, and basically violating your position of trust.
Right.
So
That's the key.
yeah,
Yeah, we're
so
all state employees, and we know that
yep,
ahead of time going in, that I'm not
yep.
there to teach Owen Anderson's opinions about politics. I'm there to teach the classes ASU assigns me.
The classes that they pay for too.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I
I
mean, these
think
people pay for.
ASU has three core values: excellence, impact, and access. And that last one is how they're slipping in the DEI stuff, because they're saying, well, that just means inclusion and diversity. But
Yeah,
then you realize, well, no, that's not what access means. Because access means
yeah,
if you're a conservative in Arizona and you've got a kid who wants to go to school and they're conservative, they have access to ASU. And right now, I'm not sure that's true in the way it should be, because I think
right.
now that student goes to ASU and they're not treated the way they with respect. Their views are
No,
put down. I've had professors tell me they enjoy destroying the faith of students.
yeah,
And that's
that's
not right
crazy.
at all. That's not how it should be. That's not
Yeah,
access anymore. Access should
yeah,
mean conservative, Christian, anybody can
yeah.
have go to ASU and not have professors trying to destroy their faith.
Well, the Bible says, I believe I was reading it this morning, where it says, you better beware if it's better that you cast a millstone around your neck than you offend one of these little ones.
Yeah,
And if there's professors out there that are doing that, be careful,
yeah,
because God's not happy with that. So,
yeah,
but I wanted to say, it'd be nice if there was equal access into our universities. uh, there are a few good organizations in ASU. I know the
yeah,
Freedom Schools, the Civic for,
yeah.
I guess, SCETL, they call it,
Yep.
Center for Arizona. I forget what it stands
Yeah,
for.
there's one, the Center for American Institutions is real good.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So there's several, and
Mhm,
it's really because I believe, of the Republican policies in the state,
mhm,
and Michael Crow at the helm.
mhm.
But it needs to be 100% better,
Yeah,
because I would not be comfortable even putting my kid in ASU, for fear of having professors try to destroy his faith.
yeah, yeah, right. Well,
And
and I think what you just quote, the Bible verse you just quoted, is really good, because it reminds us, I think what's going on is here, they don't fear God.
they don't fear
They have
God.
contempt for God. And
Yeah,
you're right to say, be careful, because
be
God,
careful.
the living God, is not to be mocked.
Oh, buddy, I'm telling you, woe unto them if they go against a child of God, because the God of the universe is on them. It's no different than if somebody went after one of their kids. They wouldn't like it. And when
Yeah.
you go after one of God's kids, you better be very careful. Yeah, you better watch it. So
Well,
Lord is
that's
going
right.
to
I
start.
think, and I think that's a theme in Scripture, is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yep.
And it's not a
Right.
craven fear. It's not like a fear in a horror movie. It's a
No.
fear of respect and awe, that you
Yep.
realize this is the one who made all things, and you're violating, you're going against him.
Yep. You're going against him. You're trying to discredit him to his children. Yeah, dads don't take kindly to that. And our Father God, which is probably offensive to a lot of
Oh
leftists,
yeah, yeah.
saying Father God is like, oh
Well,
my
even the
God.
idea that you think that you and I agree that God rules in history,
Oh,
right?
buddy.
That God rules. So I think you and I are both Christian men, and so we have
Yeah.
these beliefs,
Yes.
and we've been made fun of for those beliefs,
Yeah.
which of course would not be tolerated if the tables were turned.
Sure.
But that's why I said in the meeting, I have thick skin, because that's just what happens. And words
Yeah.
don't hurt you. But
Right.
the truth is that we have the freedom in this country to be Christians, and
Yeah.
we shouldn't have state institutions that are discriminating against us.
Right. Yeah. State institutions that we pay taxes to
Mhm.
should not be discriminated against
Yeah,
us. And that's, again, thankful to the founders of the Constitution.
yeah,
Yeah, I just think that we have to stand up. This is a time to fight. This is our 1776 moment. This is our day in history where, men like you and women like Ann Atkinson, stand up. T.W. Lewis, I know he's going on the circuit talking about
Yep.
this. They've been on Fox News, Fox and Friends, a couple different radio shows. I appreciate anyone that is out there in the fight, because
Yeah.
you are going to get hit. You're going to get hit hard, and a lot of people don't want that confrontation.
Yeah.
Frankly, Dr. Anderson, I was born for this. You were born for this.
Yeah.
You are here for such a time as this.
Well, that's true in
And
a lot of senses. I think the Lord can,
yeah,
uses us for things. My parents joke with me because ever since I was a little kid, I loved to argue. And so they're so glad I became a philosophy professor and I can just argue. But it translates into this as well, is that, yeah, we can't just stay quiet and be in the background. We have to make sure, because as you and I have said in this one, it really comes down to belief in God and Christ, our Redeemer.
Yep. And they will continue stifling you. They
Yeah.
don't want you in ASU. They don't want you teaching, your philosophy. And, as the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Mhm.
We wrestle against principalities
Yeah.
and powers of darkness, rulers of the darkness of this age. So that is true. It is a spiritual warfare. What you see in the natural is happening in the spiritual. So, as believers, and I've said this at Trump rallies, I've said this every time I speak, we as a people the Bible says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land.
Yeah.
So
that's where we're at, that need.
Yeah, all this starts with you and I and the church. And then once the church is back on its feet, then it'll go back into culture, and we'll hopefully get that awakening that we desperately need.
Yes. Amen.
Because there are so many fronts. ASU and the free speech issue is just one.
Yep.
And I thank God you guys are on there, but I'll bet you there's 3 or 4 right now, huge things that I'm fighting in the media and all that. So, thank God for who he is and the God that we trust. And
absolutely.
Thank God
and
for
I think
men like you.
And I think you're absolutely right that if the church humbles itself, that'll be the beginning of another great awakening.
Yep. It's happening.
So thank you. I like to end my Substacks by talking directly to parents and then potential students and donors. What would you say to those 3 groups right now?
Parents, students, and donors, be aware of what's happening. Be very aware of what's happening in whatever shape or form you can get involved in. I want to say at your comfort level, but maybe you got to get out of the comfort zone to get involved. But if you're a donor, we need you. We need your finances to help push the cause of conservatism, to help push the cause of Christian values, of our foundation in America. If you're a parent, just continue to talk to your student, continue to be involved. I wouldn't just throw them to the ASU, university and say, okay, go get a good education, but talk with them, find out what's going on. Maybe find some good clubs to get involved with. There are good clubs at ASU.
Yeah.
Get involved with like-minded people and students. And then as a student, stand up, be counted, get in the fight. I know young people like a cause. There is no greater cause on the face of the earth than to save America. Stand up. Even if you feel like you're the only one, I can guarantee you, if you stand up in your classroom and you say truth, that there are male and female and that's it, that men should not be playing in women's sports, that, inflation is not a good thing, that Democrats want to destroy our country. If you say those things, you might feel like you're the only one, but I guarantee you in that classroom, there's at least 10 or 15 others that are waiting on you as a leader to rise up and speak out.
Yeah. And don't allow classes to be taken off topic. If you're in a student told me she wanted to go in English literature. She loved Chaucer and she wanted to study Chaucer. So she enrolls at ASU, she gets into a Chaucer class and they spend the class talking about his sexuality.
Yeah.
And she was there to study his writing.
Yeah.
And so if you're a student, don't put up with that. That's not right.
Don't
the professor's not there to teach that.
Yeah. You're paying for that.
Yep.
You're paying for that lunacy. And just because they're an adult and they might be your professor, doesn't mean anything. You stand up. The university should be a place of debate, and you get in their face and you stand up and you say truth, and you're going to have some people behind you, because a lot of young people are like, hey, that guy's a fighter, I'm going to go with that guy or that lady. You know, she'll stand up and be counted. Yeah. So
yeah.
fight.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time to talk with me today and
Yes,
go over
sir.
these issues, and especially thank you for all you're doing, because like you said, this is only one of the many things that you're dealing with. So thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Well, we'll keep up the fight. We'll let you know. It's going to be mid-September, the next ad hoc committee hearing. I'd love to have you there
Yeah.
and give some input. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I like to show up, so just let me know.
yeah, I get your Substack. It's good stuff, and I appreciate your writings. And I am thankful you're there, sir. It gives me hope for ASU.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for everyone. Bye.